first? Who? Got first base. Who? Got first. Who is on first? What are you asking me for? I'm asking you.
What is up, everybody? I am Tim Ellerbrook, and I'm with my good friend Brian Caplinger. Welcome to this episode of Who's on First. How you doing, dude?
I'm good. I mean, not a whole lot of action in the MLB world.
Right.
Maybe just a couple things here locally that we get to shout out today.
Yeah,
but
it's nice, though, that like spring training has actually started. And just like, oh, yeah, the Super Bowl is over. Now, officially, everybody is in spring training because today is the first day for every team for full team work. So it's like, oh, baseball is happening.
yeah,
Nothing else matters now.
I just wish it felt more like spring here.
I know, for real. It makes me super jealous because we were supposed to.
We were hoping
I
to.
wanted to, yeah. We were hoping to go, but alas, it didn't. So a lot of things happened, a lot of little things, but the Cardinals finally made a transaction this weekend, finally made a move to help the team get better. They did not trade Nolan Arenado. So another episode to talk about one player. I think that something that's interesting from it is just the fact that we spent all of this time thinking, oh man, this team is going to be this because we're getting rid of this player, and then it didn't happen. So with him reporting to camp and all of this stuff that happened, what are some things that you saw or heard maybe from the process that stuck out to you, whether it was when he showed up today from interviews, or he showed up, Sunday from interviews, or, in the process that you thought was going to go this way, but it didn't, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of talk. I mean, I was very kind of vocal to be a part of the trade Arenado camp, not because I dislike Arenado and who he is. I mean, like I said last week, he's a Hall of Famer for sure. Like, there's not a doubt in that. And so I think overall he does make our team better. I think the things that stand out to me were, one, the conversation him and Mo had before. Now, we weren't privy to all of the information in that conversation, but they both alluded to the fact that before either one of them spoke to the media, they talked with each other, which I think was important because, whether you want it to be or not, it's an awkward situation when you expected to be traded, didn't pan out for whatever reason. Like, I don't want to hammer Mo too much. Like, is this a bad offseason for him? Yeah, but I think here in St. Louis, we're getting accustomed to those. And
Shots fired.
So I think it was kind of an unfortunate fail, but I do appreciate what Mo said in the fact that it really does take two teams. I think, you could have moved Arenado for maybe pennies on the dollar to a degree, but the fact that you weren't willing to make that move and you let other teams explore the Bregman option or whomever else was out there.
Yeah.
The only question that Arenado seems to not want to answer too is the whole Houston thing. Like, I'd really love to hear the reason why, because apparently there was the deal in Houston that was ready to go, and Arenado kind of shot it down. And so that's kind of the one, just out there that nobody seems to be talking about. But I'd be interested to know why. I think we got a little indication from Arenado yesterday about that and his family dynamic. But
I was gonna say, you don't think that's the final answer for it?
I don't. Because,
really?
I mean, you're not that far away. Like, if you're telling me that you're willing to play in San Diego, Houston's not that much further. I mean, geographically, yes. Yeah. But, like, for these guys that can just jump on charter flights, like, it's not that vast of a difference. Now, maybe he has some bad blood in Houston that we don't know about, that could be the reason.
From a statistic perspective, and you can't ignore the fact that players pay attention to that stuff and love it. That would be the best ballpark aside from Boston for his career, just simply because of the boxes. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. The thing I found about the denial of that, and I think the only reason, I can't say only. I think one of the reasons is because it was so early, and I think that's also why Mo was so confident when he said, "Yeah, we're gonna trade him. This is kind of a done deal." Or he didn't say those words, but he was pretty confident when he told reporters in December. But I just think it was too early, and he was like, no. Wait a second. There's got to be something else if someone's coming out already, but then there wasn't. So that would be I'm not as intrigued by that as you, although I think he would be on a better team. and have a much better shot, which you wonder if he's shooting himself in the foot for it, if he just doesn't care.
Yeah, I mean, going back, because I went back last night and I watched the full interview and was trying to key in on even like body language, even eye direction. I know I'm weird like that. I get it. But like just to kind of see where his thought process was. And I believe him when he said he didn't necessarily view himself in another uniform. Like, I think he enjoys St. Louis. I think he enjoys playing for this team. I think, he wanted to be here for a reason. I think just the conversation between the front office, I think it went somewhat like this. It was, hey, we're thinking about doing a youth movement. That means we may not be as competitive as you're really wanting to. And you could see by that same interview, he wants to win. He said it.
Yep.
Because he said he would prefer the Cardinals to really kind of go all in. Yep. But he understands why they're not, because they do need to see some things. They need to understand who they have moving forward. But I think with that, I think he really wants and is comfortable with the team and the staff here. And I think the fact that a trade really didn't happen, maybe he takes as a slight a little bit. And so, like, there's one glimmer of hope here that I can see, especially if you're a Cardinals fan, is that maybe that's that motivation that he needs to really kind of spark something. Because even, again, I'll leave some of the major quotes to you on that side, but, like, he talked about losing weight. He talked about, focusing in on his offense. And I love the one thing I will give him a lot of credit for is he took ownership of the poor offense from last year.
Yeah.
Like, he made no bones about the fact that he struggled offensively, and the team probably would have been in a different spot had he not been in that position.
Yeah, he said, I remember it was something to the effect of that, if I hit to who I am, this conversation would probably not be happening, and everything would probably be quite a bit different just because of that.
Yeah, I think last year's performance as a team overall, I'm not going to put the whole weight on him. He had his part.
Yeah.
He owned it. Goldie didn't live up to his end of the bargain.
That was a big problem.
A lot of players did not. Like Gorman, I mean, we can go down the list of why they weren't the team that everybody thought they were going to be. But when you look at paper, it's like, okay, the majority of that team is coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they all hit, which is not likely, but if the majority of them hit, could they be a sleeper team? Sure. I think a lot of people are talking about that. Even some of the major analysts on MLB and all of that are, talking about not sleeping on this team. But I just don't see them having the punch offensively. Even when I look up and down that lineup, there's not someone, unless someone ridiculously changes the dynamic of their power numbers.
Yeah.
There's not this like feared threat of somebody can change the game in one at bat all the time. I mean, yes, Nato, Willie, they have good power numbers overall.
Yeah.
But given what we saw last year, some of it with Willie is his health. He's got to stay on the field.
Yeah.
But do we expect Nato to go from, 20-ish home runs to 34 home runs this year? I don't know.
Yeah. Something that stuck out to me is, there's a few things, but something you mentioned is about how he leaned, got leaner. And, I mean, you can physically tell when you look at him, there's a different size. Obviously, his height's not changed, but he's skinnier. And he talked a lot about how he wanted more flexibility, mostly on, I guess it would be considered explosive energy on his bat. He wanted to make his hands faster. And so I'm curious to see how that translates, because when players change their body type, which we don't know what his weight was before and what it is now. We won't know that for a bit. So we don't know what, maybe it's 15 pounds that just shows up way different, or maybe it's 30 or 40. But I feel like sometimes when players do that type of stuff, it can affect them also for the worst. You never know. And I'm not saying that would be, but it's a question that I would have, and like something you'd have to see in the season. I remember the body type's not the same, so I don't know that it's a fair comparison, but it's one that sticks out to me. There was a season when they had Lance Lynn when he was pitching, I guess the mid 2010s. They had him slim down. I was like, dude, you need to be healthier, and he slimmed down and he was horrible. And I don't remember how long into the season, but they decided, like, man, you got to put more weight back on. And when he did, he got back to his normal. And then that happened last year. I remember with Zach Thompson, that was a big deal. They talked about how, oh man, he came back, he put on more weight, he got stronger, and he lost velo because of it. Just the way your body moves and everything, it affects the way he throws. Now, those are pitcher comparisons, so I don't have a hitter. There might have been an instance where Yachty did that. I didn't pay attention,
you see it up and down in Major League Baseball. A lot of players go the back and forth route, and I think there's as much for as against it in some things, but you're right when you say you change that and the fundamentals shift a little bit. Your body gets used to a certain movement, rotation that it is built in, and then all of a sudden you're trying to be quicker, changes it. The one positive I see from him kind of limbering up, getting a little bit leaner, is he struggled with a back issue. That's his Arenado. He struggled with that back issue all last year.
Yeah.
And hopefully, doing some of this work strengthens that, and maybe it gets him back to a place where he's a little bit more rangy at third base. Because if you pay attention to the numbers, he didn't have the range that he had in previous years playing third base because of that. And then, does it make him quicker at the plate as far as getting the bat head to the ball a little bit more? Because last year he was trying to do a lot of oppo type of stuff. He was trying to go to right
kind of
center.
ruined him the last couple of years. The start and it seems like it's an assumption, but it seems like when the start of 23, when he was like, I gotta get it to the opposite field, all those numbers started to drop.
Yeah, and you just wonder if in his mind, maybe it's because of a lot of different things, back issue, those type of things. He wasn't confident in getting the bat head around quick enough to pull the ball as much unless he knew the pitch or got a breaking ball. And so, again, there's something to be said. You got to hit the ball where it's pitched. That's there for a reason. So if it's on the outer half of the plate, there's no point in trying to pull that.
Right.
It's go the other way. So I don't want to negate, like, hey, hit the ball wherever it's pitched at this point.
Yeah.
But we saw last year not only him, but even Goldie, and I know he's not with us, and so I wish him all the best in New York. Maybe he can turn on some fastballs too. But that was the struggle for both of them. They just weren't able to catch up with the velo of these newer pitchers in MLB.
Yeah.
And so maybe that changes this year,
Yeah.
And so again, I go back to the fact, and both Mo and Ali said this, is our team is better with Nato on the field.
100%.
I mean, there's no doubt about that. My bigger question now is it just feels like we're back in the same boat we were last year. We're going to waffle on this idea of, are we going to try and make a run? Or are we going to try and retool
the middling
and run? Yeah. And so, I think Mo had a great game plan in his mind to let the young guys play. But when it didn't come to fruition, now he's got to pivot. And we know he likes to play things close to the chest, which I hate. It's like, as a fan base, and maybe even for Mo's legacy, it would be nice for once if he would just come out and go, hey, you know what? We really thought this was the direction we were going to go. Things didn't pan out, and now we're going to take a chance and go for it. But then I think he feels the pressure of, well, if you're going to go for it, why aren't you signing anybody?
Yeah.
But the problem is he waited too long to really figure out what was going to happen with Nato, and now there's not many people out there left. I mean, sure, you can make some trades, and I would be under the gun if I was in the front office going, we need to push some of these younger guys. And now, does that mean we want to trade them in spring? No, I'm not saying that, because we need to get a little bit better at managing our understanding of who we have. And so when you're talking about like Burley, some of these other guys like Weatherholt, Crooks, Tink Hentz, Bernal, all of those guys, even Roby on the back end that are coming up, I think you need to get a good look at them. You need to make sure you understand who they are, who they're going to be, and are they going to fit in the direction that this team is moving?
Yeah.
Because if not, this year is going to be the prime year for a lot of those guys.
Yeah.
That you need to package up and get something else in place.
Yeah, I agree. I think the one more thing I want to mention before we move on is something I really I'm going to pay attention to a lot is with Contreras now moving to first base. He's going to be the corner that's receiving everybody's throws in infield. And this is a little bit of an assumption, but a person that pays attention to body language, Nolan is both of them actually are really emotional players, and they physically show it. What is their relationship going to be like? They're the de facto veterans of everything in this era where the kids were supposed to play, and they talked about in winter warm-up, like Newtbar, Burleson, Donovan, even a little bit of Mason Wynn, like stepping up and leading the clubhouse. Well, is that still going to be the thing, or is Willie and Arenado going to step up? Like, what is the two things? What is that dynamic going to look like? And then what is Wilson and Arenado's relationship and dynamic going to look like? Because they're going to hit in the heart of the order because they're being paid to do it. Wilson is our best hitter on paper, was last year, was in 23, sorry. Probably expected to be that. Expected to be healthier just because he's not behind the dish anymore. But then he's receiving that. What's the defense going to look like when, Mason Wynn's trucking 100? Adam and Arenado is throwing a really off-balance throw because that's what he does. But Goldie obviously picked really well. So what is that going to look like? And when errors happen, then what's going to happen between that relationship? So that's something I'm paying attention to with all of that. And then, the leadership structure, I guess, in the clubhouse, it was expected and talked about how Donovan, Newtbar, and a little bit of Mason Wynn, although he's really young, and then kind of seems like Burleson, I guess because he was older, we're like, hey, we need to step up and like take ownership of these problems sometimes. So is that going to continue, or is it going to rest on Wilson and Arenado? That's something I may be paying attention to.
Yeah, I think you're hoping that some of these young guys do take a turn. I mean, especially Mason Wynn right now. He's very much the face of the franchise.
Yes.
King. Right. And so you're wanting him to obviously step up. I think Donovan's already shown he has the ability to lead.
Yeah.
I think his benefit of being around like Matt Carpenter, Goldie last year, really helped him. I think he was already a person that's, prone to leadership skills.
Yeah.
And so I think it was a natural move for him. Nato is what I would consider like a quiet leader.
Yeah.
He lets his work ethic show kind of in that. I don't know. I've never been in a locker room, so I can't speak to as far as for the Cardinals side of things, if he is that vocal leader with the team. And we've talked about it before. I don't know that he's quote unquote like that leadership type of guy. Now, maybe he can step up to that this year, and that's to be seen. Mm-hmm. But to speak on the Willie-Nato relationship, I think they both admire each other as ball players. Like, they appreciate one another in that regard. Yeah. They both recognize they have a desire to win. They want to do everything they can for the team that they're playing for to succeed. And so I think there's an appreciation that goes there outside of just general, you're on my team, I got your back. I don't know that there's much of a relationship there. And I don't say that like despairingly. I think it's they're from two vastly different worlds. Baseball is the one thing that brings them together.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of where that relationship stands. Now, unless one of them wants to come out, I mean, they're welcome to come on the show too and kind of talk about their relationship if they'd like to. But you haven't seen that. And as far as Willie at first, like, yes, there's going to be growing pains. Like, I understand that. He's not the level of defender that Goldie is. But again, I think he's going to surprise a lot of people with how quick he picks up that position. Yeah. Because a lot of times, people forget catchers, man, they're receiving pitches at 100+ miles an hour. They're receiving balls that are moving with breaking balls and things like that. So the movement of the ball and the speed or velocity of the ball coming across the infield, sure, it's slightly different because it's from a longer distance most of the time, or there's in between. Like but it's really when you take a catcher and move them to first, one of the reasons why they do that is because it's similar in a lot of ways. It's short hops, it's picks, it's footwork, it's, receiving, balls in a way that you're not normally used to when you're just standing or playing a position most of the time. And so, I think he's going to be better than a lot of people are anticipating. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. There's going to be a play this year, I promise you, that somebody's going to fire one across the infield. It's going to be a great throw, and it's going to tip off the top of his glove.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and you got to give him credit. He's been working all off season with Jose Oquendo. It was reported, relearning that position, or not maybe but just learning. So I mean, he's putting in the work. But yeah, in game practice obviously is different than.
Yeah, and I think that's what you want to watch in spring. I wonder if he's going to have an extended spring, in a way that a little bit more playing time than typically he would get.
Yeah,
just because they want to get him the reps there. And so I'm excited to see it. I appreciate the heck out of the dude because...
Oh, dude, he's such a good player.
Right. I mean, the passion alone, I think, from him is going to be something this team needs.
Yeah,
They've missed it since Yachty left.
Yeah, I think if you take Mason Wynn aside, because obviously he's the hero that we all need, I think if there's any player that Cardinals fans need to get behind, it's Wilson Contreras, because he has given everything to this organization since he got here, and he's kind of gotten the shaft a little bit. Obviously, fans love him, but yeah, I mean he's a great player. So the next thing I think is with Arenado staying, what does that actually look like? And in practice, or in theory, since he's here, who's not gonna make it? Who's gonna get squeezed out? Because him now taking up that position moves Gorman off of that position. Now, obviously, there's gonna be games that he doesn't play, games that he DHs. But I'm talking about the 100+ games that Arenado's going to be at third base, keeps Gorman off of third base. And that's going to have a trickle-down effect. So who's going to get squeezed out because of it? Who's going to have to really, really make a show to force himself onto the roster? What do you think?
I mean, obviously, I think the biggest impact overall, not that he's not going to be on the roster, is going to be to Gorman. Because Gorman went back to, honing his craft at third a little bit this offseason with the expectation that he might be the third baseman. And he's a guy that I think we've proven he has to have consistent at-bats. If he doesn't have consistent plate appearances, he can get in a really, really deep hole quickly.
Yeah.
And
honestly, even with that.
Right. And so with that, I think, for me, it force him to second base, Gorman, that is. Mm-hmm. If it forces him to second base because he needs to be on the field as well, if he can just be DH, I think, again, it does kind of push a couple different ways. If he's forced to second base, then obviously Donovan moves to left field. Then you've got the whole question of who's going to be in center field, right? Whether it's Nootbaar, whether it's VS2, Ciani. And at the end of the day, I think no matter what happens here, there are really two players that kind of get the shaft by the fact that Nolan's back in the lineup. And it's going to be one of those two guys, Ciani, VS2, or Burleson. Those are the three players that I'm really looking at that it's going to hit, because can Burley essentially become a left-handed bat off the bench if he's not going to consistently play? I mean, I think he's going to get at bats here and there. Don't get me wrong. He'll DH a time or two. There's some flexibility with the lineup, but his primary role then goes to being a bat off the bench.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's where the biggest impact comes from as far as roster battles. Yeah, then it turns to center field, because you're looking at that fourth outfielder spot. Is it going to be Victor Scott? Is it going to be Ciani? And you can't forget they signed another utility guy in Hellman from the Twins. And so
but that's a bench player to take care of Mason Wynn.
Right, but I'm saying he's got to eat up a roster spot.
Yeah.
If he's going to be your shortstop,
he's got to be on the 26.
He's got to be on that 26. And so are you legitimately going to carry 14 position players and only 12
Which I don't
pitchers?
think you can. I think it has to be split at 13-13 now.
It might be
that rule.
It might be. I could be forgetting that. So I'll give you props to that. So therein lies the problem, because what you're looking at right now, if you look at it, on the bench, if you go with the standard lineup, again, you put Wynn at short, Newton left, Willie in first, Donnie at second, Nato at third, Gorman DHing, Herrera catching, Walker in right field, and I'm even going out on a limb because I know you love him, put VS2 in center.
Come on now.
All right, here's your bench. You've got Burley, Pajes. You got to make a decision between Ciani, Sagasi, One of those guys has to stay. One of those guys has to go, and you have to make a decision between Hellman or Baker. And you've already said Hellman's got to be on that spot. So that means if you give it to Hellman, then Siani, Sagasi, and Baker are all left off.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah. Yeah, I think the person that's going to get hit the most from it, which really sucks because I think he's got a really good chance to be really good, is Sagasi. He obviously didn't have a great rookie month, but if you think about it, Mason Wynn in his first year at that last month of 23 was atrocious. Given in spring, they said, yeah, Mason Wynn's a shortstop. That's his game. Came out the first 5 months of the season, stellar. He tailed off in September, never played a full season, just got tired. You got to give him credit for it. But he was given the job out of the gate and didn't have to earn it. And so I feel like Sagasi could have been that, but I don't think there's a shot. I think it's guaranteed he goes to AAA now, which sucks for him because he went to the fall league and hit really well, proved he's ready. There's not really anything for him to do in AAA anymore.
Right.
It seems like so, but
and I would push back. Maybe you look at Hellman and he was a signing that you made in hopes to just bolster the depth, but maybe he goes down to AAA. Right.
But let me throw this at you. If that's the case, is Sagasi a bench bat, or in my mind, to succeed, to thrive, to figure out who he is, he's got to be given those 600 plate appearances like we're talking about for Walker, Gorman. Same thing with Burleson, in my opinion.
Right.
He benched in 23 and he wasn't really good. He only became good when he played the entire season.
Yeah, but here's the reality, and this would be the pushback that I would have on that. Even if Nato's not on this team, does he get that many at-bats? Probably not, because he's going to play a bench role. He's going to play Sagasi. He's going to play a rotation role.
Yeah. Yeah, no. He would be a utility infielder,
right.
No matter what.
He can still play that role on this team. When Nato needs a day off, he's there. When Wynn needs a day off, he's there. You could even throw him at second because, and again, unpopular opinion by a lot of people because they're going to look at his bat to ball skill and get mad at me. But I think you're in prime position now to trade Burleson because Donnie can play first.
Yeah.
If you absolutely need to keep Baker on the roster, he's a traditional first baseman in that. So you make some moves here. And I know it's not popular, it's not exciting, but you make some moves with Burley. You might be able to get a good, solid reliever. I think you package Burley with someone like a Matz, someone like Fetty maybe, and you can make some moves. And along with that, you also open up spots in the pitching rotation to put some of these guys. Like, does Graceffo get to come up and play out of the bullpen if you make some of these moves?
Yeah.
Get rid of some of these guys that you have questions about and give some opportunity here. That's the byproduct, again, going back to the original question, of Nato now staying on the team.
Yeah.
If he's not on the team, Burley's pretty much in the lineup every day, whether it's DH, taking over at first for Willie when he needs to, those type of things. But right now, he's out.
Yeah.
He's going to be a bench bat. He's going to maybe be a replacement at first base or a replacement in left field because that's the only defensive position so far that he's not a liability.
Yeah, I mean, he's a liability. So I actually want to camp on that for a minute. So I was thinking it was going to be Gorman or Burleson, and this team's going to have to choose one or the other. And on paper, and from a big perspective, you think Gorman's the choice. He was the first round pick. And I was thinking, for some reason, I thought the team was like, Burleson is the guy that they want. Because, I mean, he's a contact hitter, and Gorman's obviously a swing and miss power hitter. But I did some digging, and I compared their two best seasons. So Gorman's best season so far was his 23 season. And he was pretty fantastic until he got hurt. And he did have a month. He has a bad month in June every year for some reason, which nobody knows why. The month of June just makes him not be able to play ball. But in 23, Gorman had 464 plate appearances. He had 27 home runs. He had an 11.4% walk rate, almost 32% walk rate or K rate, which is pretty high. You would like to see that right below 30. If I would consider him to be elite, in my opinion. 235 average, was really low, but he had an 805 OPS, which is pretty good, especially for a first full season. 118 WRC plus. And the things that stick out to me for comparisons, I'm going to throw Burleson's numbers here. He had a 16.5% barrel percentage, which puts him in the 97th percentile in all MLB hitters, and a 91% sweet spot percentage. Both of them are negative defensive run saves and negative outs above average. Burleson's biggest season was 2024. He got almost 150 more plate appearances at 595. He hit 21 home runs, which is 6 less in more plate appearances. He had a 5.9% walk rate, so a really low walk rate, but he only had a 12.8% strikeout rate, which is really low. He had a 269 average, so he had pretty bad batted ball luck, I guess you could say, whatever that would be. But he had a 735 OPS, so you compare that to Gorman's 805 OPS in less plate appearances. Is an interesting comparison. Only 100. He had 106 WRC plus, but he has, and this is an interesting thing to me, a 6.5% barrel percentage, which is in the 35th percentile, which is really low to all MLB hitters, and a 51% sweet spot. So to me, Gorman is going to take every single left-handed DH bat above Burleson on paper. Now, if all Gorman does is sit there and strike out all the time, his money is made when he hits that barrel rate and that ball soars. So the thing I'm looking for is Gorman going to have more contact, or is he going to swing and miss? And is Burleson going to have more good luck at his contact? Because if his rookie year he had 735 OPS, that's pretty low for just a DH. You need something. I feel like you need something more from that. He had power. He ran out of gas. I think also the league adjusted to him, and they started putting more. Ollie even said it in an interview this week. Burleson started to pitch outside, and he was making contact on really bad pitches. So is he going to be able to not make them come into the zone so he could swing? Is he going to have good luck? That's a couple of the things I'm interested to see between the two of them, because I think, in my opinion, I think you can only have one of them. Burleson's not going to be good off the bench. He proved that in 23.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I say for Burley, if he's going to stay on this team, it's an adjustment of roles. You've got to be able to change your mindset and go from an everyday player to that impact bat off the bench. And now, don't get me wrong, a lot of great players have made a really good living, long career in MLB in that role of being able to come in and
100%.
play and be this legitimate bat off the bench that scares other teams.
Yeah.
Like, they change their tactics to avoid that.
Mm-hmm.
And so he could be that and still have a place on this team. But I think you're right. I think if Nato is going to be here for this retool, if you will, you've got to start moving some pieces. And that's why I think it's so critical this spring to really decide who those guys are. You have been unwilling to trade Gorman from the get-go.
Right.
And unless something has changed internally, I don't see that happening because, again, left-handed power bats, which is what he projects to be. There is swing and miss in his game, then that's always going to be a part. But if he is going to be that power bat, that's something you need on this team. Because I can't go down the list right now and guarantee 30-plus home runs from anybody.
Right.
You know, there's maybe 2 on this list that have been talked about in that category, and they're 2 that haven't been proven. It's Walker and it's Gorman. And right now, Walker's profile
in that category
is not there, but Wilson hasn't hit 30 in his career.
No, but he's never played enough games to hit 30.
Right. And so that's what I'm saying. I mean, like, Nato has done it. So could he get back to that form? Sure. I'm not going to, negate his ability to do that. Can Willie do it with a full season? Maybe the move to first is there. So that's great. But they're also 2 of your aging players.
Yeah, 100%.
You don't have a young guy that profiles that way right now.
Yeah, I think Yeah, that will be interesting to see. Something else that out of those two things that stuck out to me is Gorman is not as good of a defender as we thought he was. In 2023, so his good rookie year, he was still -3 outs above average at second base. And in 24, he slid even more to -6 outs above average. And so, like, 2 seasons of sliding already, and he's young. I mean, he is young. He needs more time. Or not needs more time, but you never know. He can improve. I don't know that I put him in the field when you've got Donovan, who's an excellent defender.
Well, I know you're a stats guru.
Yeah.
And the only stat I did, because I wasn't going to rob you of the fun of this, was I wanted to look at Donovan's DRS. And at second base, he's a 3 for last year.
Oh, in 24?
Yeah. Okay. He was a -1 in left field.
Really?
Yeah. So just take that in for a minute, because I would have, from the eye test, I would have said he was just as good in left field as he was at second base. Now, obviously, there was a little bit more opportunity.
You know his outs above average, though?
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't look that up, so I'll leave that to you.
Okay.
But I think there's more comfort for Donovan when he's at second base. He's a utility guy, and he can play anywhere, because I don't want to negate the Gold Glove that he got as a utility player.
Yeah.
Because the dude's a baller. He'll just play wherever you put him. He'll figure
he
it
had
out.
a nomination last year.
Right. He'll figure it out. But you can see, at least from the numbers, that he is most comfortable at second base. And I wonder if some of that, I know he was coming back off the arm injury, couldn't throw for a while. Maybe that has an effect on those numbers from last year as well. Yeah. But for me, there's something about that number that at second base, he's a great borderline elite defender. In left field, he goes too good. He's an above average left fielder. And that's why I think you really do have to consider the notion of putting Newt in left field, let Newt play left field, and let Ciani and VS2 battle it out for center. And whoever wins at the plate becomes your starting center fielder in the spring.
I need to find, I'm looking for fielding stats, because I've got the positional or batting stats. I have to get that. I'll have to look at it later and confirm that via Twitter or something. So the last thing I think for is that center field option. I think going into spring, it seems like all 3 players are going to have a shot, with Nootbaar, Ciani, and Victor Scott going into it. I think Nootbaar is going to make the team no matter what. He's going to be an everyday lineup, but it's just, is he going to be good enough in center to take it away from those two, or is Ciani / Victor Scott going to be good enough to take it away from Nootbaar and keep him in the corners? Yeah, I mean, obviously having a defensive specialist is to the benefit of our pitching staff, considering how many are contact pitchers. But is their bat going to be good enough? Because we didn't score enough runs last year.
Right.
And we have to score runs. So whoever is going to have the best offensive profile without having the biggest, I think, defense thing. And I was pretty set going into this week that Nootbaar is just not a great center fielder. I was very much wrong when I dug into some stats. So this is a lot of information for people, but this is the nerd that I am. I was looking at his metrics on how good is his bat when he's in center field versus when he's in left field, and how good is his glove. And he's above average in every defensive category. So defensive run saves and outs above average is the 2 that I'm using in all 3 positions. He's in 23. He was 3 defensive runs saved in right field, and -1 out above average. In 24, 1 defensive run saved, 1 out above average in right field. In center field, I thought it was interesting. In 23, he was -1 DRS and 1 out above average. And last year, he was 0 DRS and -1 out above average in center field. That's pretty average. And I mean that in a good way. Like, he's not below average, he's not above average, but defensively, he's an average center fielder. And hitting wise, in 23, he had almost 300 plate appearances and had a 121 WRC plus in center field. And in 24, he only had 56. He was injured a lot, but they played Siani for most of the season. He had a 61 WRC plus last year. I wonder if that is because of his hitting style and the way that his swing is so timing dependent. That was kind of the bulk of his season. If he would get injured, it'd take him long to ramp back up to get his swing timed. And then if he was playing center field at that time period, you never know. I didn't dig into each game split for that, but he's not as bad is not as bad in center field as I originally thought. So I think if he shows enough to be good enough, I think he's the starting center fielder. And I think that is more important than Siani / Victor Scott, unfortunately, having to ball out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to have to hit a 350 average and just, like, ball out to take the job away from Nootbaar. I think is kind of what it seems. What do you think? There's a lot of numbers.
Yeah, no, it's something I've said before. I didn't have the numbers to back it up. I left that to you, so I'm glad you proved me right. No.
And I'll take credit because I was like, he's terrible.
Right.
He is terrible.
He's a good center fielder.
Yeah.
I think the biggest concern I have with is every time you put him in center field, it seems like his body breaks down.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is. Maybe it's just unluck from him on that side or is he overextending himself to make plays in center field?
Mm-hmm.
Like dives, he's not as fast as Siani or Victor Scott. So those balls in the alley, is he overextending, overstriding, putting in more effort to get to those balls, going harder so he can't slow down as quick, runs into the wall, those type of plays that are minor in the scale of things.
Yeah.
Because when the routine plays happen, he's money. Like
Every
doesn't
outfielder can do that.
Right. He doesn't, he plays a good center field. And so that's why I think too, you got to start thinking about longevity. I mean, we talk about it with Mike Trout, just to throw a name out there.
Yeah.
Elite center fielder, Gold Glove winning center fielder, but now he's at the point where he can't stay healthy for a variety of reasons. It's not his defensive prowess, but maybe it's time to shift him to a different position. We're doing it on the Cardinals with Willie. Get him out of the catcher spot to first base to give him an opportunity to play a full season.
Yeah.
That's why my recommendation is to move him to left field. Put him in left field. It's less wear and tear on his body, and give Siani and Victor Scott an opportunity to play center field. You can do this, and you can still keep Burleson on the roster. It just means that Siani, Victor Scott, or Baker, or one of the Hellman, those guys can't be on the 26-man.
Yeah.
Like, you have to make a tough decision between those, because you could put Burley out and left for a game or two to spell that position if you need to move Nootbaar to center for a game to give Victor Scott a break or Siani a break.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like, Newt's not bad to go out there for a series a day.
Yeah.
I just don't know that I want to see him in center field for the entirety of the season. Now, Newt's a baller. He'd go out and prove me wrong tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy with that. But you mentioned it in a text early to me or last night that, you're getting close on that age with Victor Scott. He's 24.
Yeah. Siani is as well. They're both the same age.
And so you bypass another year. He spends another year in AAA, which is not uncommon to see a 25, 26-year-old come up. But realistically, is that what's going to happen? Because if Nato didn't go anywhere this year, you have a little bit of success. Do you think he's going anywhere next year?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
so you're going to be back in the same boat.
To quote Ollie in an interview a couple days ago, he talked about how the only reason that Burley was successful this year is because he played the entire season. He was let go. Now, he ended the season awfully because they got adjusted to. But you're probably not going to see these players, and that's why I mentioned Sagasi too, if they don't get the entire runway to just figure it out and to not be the shuttle. The defense thing for the outfield, the big question I have with Newton center is, as much as we love your boy Walker, and he could end up turning out to be just an average right fielder. He's not an average right fielder right now. He's a negative outfielder, which is fine. We care more about his bat and him getting, that many plate appearances. But is Newt's defensive prowess in center enough to make up for the lack of defensive prowess in Walker and the gap closing that could potentially need to be made? And then the injury potential. I think about the spring training last year when Walker collided with Carlson and just took him out.
That's a big boy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dude. Yeah, and you think about the benefit you have with Scott and Ciani, one of the two, is their speed is really high. Obviously, Scott's speed is better. Can they get to balls before Walker to avoid that issue, or to even make up for a missed gap that Walker take that Walker doesn't have? I remember watching a highlight game a couple weeks ago in New York when it was Scott and Walker in Yankee Stadium, and the Walker and Scott was running towards the ball, kind of in that gap and in right center, and Scott just got there way quicker than Walker did and got the out, saved the run. And can Newt do that in a fast enough time, or is it going to hurt his body? That's one of the things that I think about. I think.
Yeah, and I'll tease this maybe for another episode, but it puts a lot of pressure on your pitching staff too.
Yeah.
If you don't have swing and miss guys, and you're playing to contact, your fielding matters.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where, having someone like Nato is important on the infield, but that's why a defensive center fielder seems to be the ticket for St. Louis, because there's a lot of space in those gaps. And so, that's something that obviously we don't have time today to dive into, but you look at what the impact of Newt in center field is going to mean when you talk about Walker in right field, that gap, what's that going to mean for the pitching staff?
Yeah, missed balls. That's a good point. We should wrap that particular portion up and let's check in around the league. That's a good tease. We might talk about that a little more maybe next week. Is there anything? So this is the first week of this. Last week was the first week that pitchers and catchers reported. So most squads probably had 2/3 of their roster, and not everybody reported until yesterday. Today, Monday, marks the first day that full squad reports and practices. But is there anything from the past week, spring training, that stood out to you, in the rest of the league and National League, American League?
Yeah, there are really two teams, one national, one American, that kind of caught my eye. One of them I've already talked about in Houston, and I'll get to them, but I even kind of fell asleep on Atlanta.
Yeah.
And who they are in the NL East, right? There's a lot of conversation, and rightfully so, around the Mets right now. Philly's Philly. They haven't really done a whole lot, but they're a solid team regardless. And then I was thinking, why are we not talking about Atlanta when Strider's coming back? Acuna's going to return in May. Michael Harris is coming back for them, right? They picked up Profar from San Diego.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
They picked up Kelnick last year at a trade deadline deal, and then they also got Brian De La Cruz from Miami.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not see that. That's interesting.
And so, this team, man, offensively, they can carry a slow starting pitching staff.
Yeah, I think about, was 23 the season that they had the best offense in all of baseball or something?
Yeah, and because we're sleeping on, Riley. And
because he was hurt for most of the season last year.
Right. I mean, this team, to me, could upset a lot of the Mets' momentum, a lot of the Phillies' momentum. They did lose Fried. Okay, so he went on to Boston.
But they have
Sale's back.
Sale.
You got Strider. The big question for me for them is can their pitching hold up? Number one, is it going to stay healthy?
Yeah.
And their 4 and 5 spots need to be won. The back end of that rotation, somebody's going to have to step up, whether it's Swellenbach, some of the other young guys that they have in their organization. Can those guys step up?
Yeah, I'll pitch a question to you. Who do you think, can Strider come back at the top of the season in 100% force, or do you think he has to start slow?
I think you're going to want to ramp him up just because of the nature of his age and who he is. you don't want him to come out full bore right from the beginning. The competitor he's going to want to.
Yeah.
But I think you try and work in maybe a 6-day rotation for him.
Yeah.
Like you're going to need a spot starter, especially early in the season. Give him maybe that extra day to rest a little bit. Outside of that, Sales
Schwellenbach was awesome last year too.
Right. Sale's a dog. I mean, we found that out. Again, if he can stay healthy, he's going to do it. And then flipping it to the AL for me quickly is I've been all in on Houston. I think what they did on the offensive side made a lot of sense. I mean, seeing Bregman walk to Boston, obviously that hurts, but the moves they made with Walker and Paredes and some of those other guys that they've been able to kind of mix in the picture there, I think they're going to be fine offensively. I think they did a right job of finding the right people for their ballpark.
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to be good.
That's a good take. Yeah.
But for me, it's, I listened to an interview with Aaron Getty, and he's changed his whole mindset. He's in a good headspace. Last year, he got kind of beat up a little bit. He's changed his routine. He's wanting to be a little bit more of a vocal leader in the clubhouse. He wants to get back to showing a little bit more passion when he plays. He said he stifled that because he thought, it wasn't something that was to be kind of shown on the field.
Yeah.
He said, but he didn't realize how much it took away from his pitching momentum in the games. And so he's not going to go crazy. He's like, I'm not going to go out there and just try and show everybody up. But he's like, in key moments, I'm going to let the emotion come out because that's a part of my game. And so I'm really interested in seeing what he can do. And then McCullers is coming back after a 2-year absence. I mean, he had that flexor tendon. It kind of derailed him for 2 years. He talked about the idea of starting in AAA this year to get back into game speed, which I think is super smart. He said his velo's already back, so he's still around the 92 to 94 range with his fastball. He said he wants to get a little bit more movement with those breaking pitches. But man, that's, again, he was at the top of his game before he got hurt. I mean, he's a little bit older now, 31, I believe is his age. And so he's in that prove it spot. And so this is going to be a big year on him.
Was he a first round pick?
I think so. Yeah.
Wow.
And so my biggest concern for Houston is really depth on both sides of the ball. There's not a lot of depth in their pitching staff outside of their front line. There's not a lot of depth on their bench. That's something that's going to have to be proven.
They also traded, what's his name, to the Cubs?
Kyle Tucker.
No, two. The pitcher. Or the closer, Presley.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
So both Tucker and Presley went to the Cubs.
Yeah. And so, but I mean, you got haters still. There's, there's some thoughts on that. I know we won't get into that, but statistically looks like he is a closer.
Yeah,
can
for
be
sure,
a closer,
for sure.
right? The guy that I'm really watching is a guy named Ryan Gusto. He was in their AAA last year, 26 starts. Here's some more stats for you. I know you're gonna appreciate this, right? 8-6, a 3.70 ERA, and 26 starts. And so, could he snag a rotation spot? I don't think they're counting on it right yet, but they're going to need some depth. One thing I thought was fascinating, I think they said...
Yeah, you need 6 or 7.
Right. I think they said they started 21 different guys last year.
Oh, I believe that,
because of the injuries, different things like that took place. And so you're hoping that number's less, obviously, because that means your starters are staying healthy.
Yeah.
But you're going to need some of these other guys. They got another pitching prospect, I think, that's in, the 11 to 15 range that they're going to look at during spring. But again, I'm going to bet on Gusto here. He's shown some things.
Okay.
And so I want to see if he can in spring kind of make that up.
So as of right now, would you pick Houston over Texas for the West?
I am, just because of the history of Houston.
Yeah.
I think they've proven.
That's valid.
Right. I think they've proven that. I think it's going to be tight. I'm not one that just says Houston walks away with this. I think Texas is going to have a fight this year. I think they're going to rebound a little bit. I think there is something to the World Series hangover.
That and I'm forgetting his name, but who's the manager for Texas? Why am I blanking on his name? Bochy, yeah. I don't know if you remember his runs in San Francisco, but he was in every other year. So you never know what the every other year will be for Texas this year. No, those are good. I think Houston's one of the obviously, if there's 6 playoff teams in each league, obviously they're one of the 6 in the AL. The AL is pretty weak outside of 4 or 5 teams. So I'm gonna dig some more and look at Texas because I think they're a little underrated on some of the moves they made. But for me, obviously, I'm still paying attention to Boston. They picked up Bregman, which is a little sour for us Cardinals fans because we thought that's where Arenado was going to go. And I think if I were trying to be unbiased, I think Arenado would have been better for them. But from doing some research and watching some interviews, the main reason that they chose Bregman was because of his positional flexibility. They talked about how he's completely willing to play second base. And it kind of seems like because of that, Devers is wanting to stay at third base. And then they've got a prospect that's ready to start in Christian Campbell that could potentially take third base over if they move Devers to DH, but that means they're going to keep Casas. So their infield is Casas, Bregman, Trevor Story, pending health, obviously, because he's always injured too, and then Devers, and then Yoshida/Devers at DH. So you never know what it's going to look like. But man, the pitching moves that they made it's got me really stoked. I'm interested to see now since Bregman signed so late in the offseason. He reported to camp yesterday after signing 2 days before, which is wild if you think about it. So I'm interested to see what their camp progress looks like as I pay attention to that. And then the other thing is I thought, and that's a little newsworthy, is watching Dodgers camp a little bit, seeing the crazy amount of pitching talent that they have. And
right.
It feels like they have 20 starters that are all elite, vying for 5 positions. But one thing, people are going to get hurt. The pitchers that they have all have injury histories. I know their coaching staff did a few meetings in the offseason to deep dive. Why is all of their staff always getting hurt so bad? Because they go to the playoffs every year missing and needing 2 pitchers when they have an abundance, it seems. So I'm interested to see what comes out of that. How are they going to keep people healthy? And then Ohtani is pitching right now. He's just doing bullpen side sessions, and he's getting up to – he's already at 92 to 94 velo coming off of his second Tommy John. And he hasn't thrown a pitch since 23, I think. It was when did he get August in 2023? So he hasn't thrown for a long time. Obviously the Dodgers system is – pretty spectacular at development and helping people through. I remember in an interview, Dave Roberts said they assume and they plan on Ohtani being ready in May to actually step on the mound. So I'm interested to see that progression because he won MVP as a DH last year, which I don't know if that has happened or it's happened maybe once or twice. That's pretty
very
unreal.
Limited. Right.
So with the contract that he has and his value, is if his pitching makes his hitting take a hit. I'm curious to see what that looks like. Is he going to be able to get back up to he was a 98 to 100 velo fastball pitcher in 22 and 23. So is he going to be able to get there? So I'm watching that, and then I'm kind of interested to see what their rotation shakes out. Because, for us as Cardinal fans, the National League is running through Los Angeles. You would assume that the Dodgers are going to be in the NLCS with the team that they have. Now, baseball's a random sport, and they could get knocked out in the divisional round again. You never know, but that team's got to be gone through somehow. And so, yeah, I'm curious about that. But I think that's it. Since we're a little better on time this year or this week. But thanks for listening, guys. We're really trying to get out on YouTube and get conversations going. So make sure you comment on these videos and we can talk about takes, how you disagree with us. We enjoy that stuff a lot. So thanks for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next week on Who's on First.